Welcome back. Now, it's time to move up to our next lesson, which has to do with sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is quite still not as strong as it was before, but it's still kind of a controversial issue. The reality is that our country and our culture have become a little bit more acceptance, especially I want to say over the last 6 years, about sexual orientation. And the kind of comments, even the kind of language that is used today, does not resemble at all for what was accepted or said even 10 years ago. So there's been quite a change over the last especially for me at least the last 6 years. And this video is going to talk a little bit about what's behind this topic. So as we begin, sexual orientation is defined as the overall sense of attraction that you have towards either people of the same sex, people of a different sex, and in the field of psychology, there's still an argument and a debate going on about different types of orientation that have been proposed. So there may be a sense of pansexuality when you're attracted to someone regardless of their sex. There may be asexuality, which refers to someone that does not have an orientation. There's an exploration of different elements, but for the purposes of this video and this class, let's keep it super simple. Heterosexuality is attraction to people of different sex. Homosexuality is attraction to people of the same sex. And bisexuality is attraction to people of either sex. First thing to discuss now, there's overall two major misconceptions that abounds when you talk about sexual orientation. Misconception 1, gender identity. This is less and less common, I've noticed, because people seem to be more and more educated as years go by. Gender identity, as we have discussed before, gender is an expectation in society placed on you based on your sex. So if I am a male, I have a set of expectations placed on me for my sexuality. If I am a male, I am supposed to like perhaps raw sports, I'm supposed to be handy in the house, I'm supposed to like cars, and so on and so on. Identity is to the point where you feel like you accept those expectations. As a male, I have all these expectations for what I am supposed to be doing as a male. Do I agree with them or not? That's identity. When we think of sexual orientation is external, is solely the attraction that you experience to someone based on their sex. If I, as a male, like other males, that doesn't mean that I want to be a woman. If I don't feel connected to my gender, that's unrelated, that's identity. Who I am attracted to is orientation. Most often, say if in my case I'm a male and I'm attracted to males, it doesn't mean that I want to be a female. I feel just as comfortable being a male, the only difference is that I like males instead of females. So when we think of sexual orientation, someone that has a same sexual orientation does not want to be of the other sex. Most often they feel comfortable in their own sex, but they feel attracted to people in the same category. That seems to be less of a confusion. It was more common before, but it's becoming less and less common as years go by. However, though, I do see the other one still kind of lingering. When you think of sexual orientation, you only focus on the sexual aspects of a relationship. So what this means is, for any of you watching this video that is currently in a relationship, when you are in a relationship, for all the time that you spend with a person, how much time do you spend doing anything sexual? The reality is that it's not that much. If you're spending 20 hours with a person, 20 is 100%, you may spend 1 hour, you may spend 2 hours doing anything sexual. You spend a lot more time doing a lot of other things. You spend a lot of time sleeping with the person, eating with the person, talking with the person, cleaning, buying groceries, especially if you're living with a person, going out to the movies, watching TV together, whatever, hanging out with friends, whatever. So when you're in a relationship, the time that you spend with someone the percentage of time that you spend doing anything sexual is rather a small percentage. We should envision this when we think of sexual orientation, because when people think of those of a sexual orientation that differs from the norm, people seem to only focus on the sexual aspects. If I were to say that I'm homosexual, people seem to only think that I want to kiss guys, that I want to have sexual intercourse with men. But it's more than that. It's the direction of your romantic interest. I want to have a relationship with a man. That's much, much more, and that's encompassing what really orientation is about, far better than if you only focus on who you want to have sex with. That also goes along with the next one, because I do want to emphasize just a couple points here. Population. So, what percentage of the population is actually homosexual or bisexual? This question has been around for a while, and if you take it to for how long has data been recorded on this, it's about 50 years worth of data, so it's not a super old topic of study, but it's not that new either. So, what percentage of the population is considered homosexual or bisexual? The percentages across studies in multiple countries seem to have men at about 7% and seem to have women at about 5%. The percentage of people that have at least once had some type of sexual activity with someone of their same sex is a little bit higher at about 10%, but in the overall population, the people that define themselves with an orientation being homosexual or bisexual is less than 10%. So, when people think about homosexuality or bisexuality in the population, it seems that people have an idea that is a far higher percentage. 20%, 25% is not unusual to hear. I survey my students on this question, and there have been times where students have told me that it's even more than 50%. You're saying that the majority are people who are homosexual or bisexual. The reality is that it isn't. In every country where there has been a survey on this, the number is consistently below 10%. So it's not easy to place a specific number, but at least we can confidently say that it's about less than 10% in the overall population. Have the percentages been increasing over the years? No. You may see it more now because of civil rights. People are more open to their different sexual orientation, but it doesn't mean that you're seeing more now than you had before. What was different is that before people will hide it. And a couple last things on this. Consistently, on research taken around, there are higher percentages in homosexuality in men than in women, and there are higher percentages of bisexuality in women than in men. This is very consistent with data taken across the globe. And the next question is, what are the origins? Some people might say that it's learned, some people might say that it's biological. The reality is that the field concludes that there is a biological component, and that's a fact. There's a biological component, but the field cannot consistently explain where, or if it's only one thing, or if it's entirely biological. Neither one of those things can be confirmed by the field. There is a biological component, but that biological component is overall about 50 to 60% of orientation. So it is partially learned. It's a combination of both. What ends up, giving someone a different sexual orientation than the norm is a genetic predisposition plus something in the environment. But if a person does not have that biological component in them, for as much as you try to teach them to be homosexual or bisexual, the person is just not going to get it. Orientation, for what we know up to this point, cannot be entirely learned. So you cannot give therapy to a person to just make them straight, and you cannot give therapy to a person to just make them gay. I want to conclude this video by giving you a quick introduction to a concept in cognitive psychology. See, your mind works on two levels, a level that is conscious and a level that is automatic. In the conscious level of the mind, typically this is your mind sharpened and at your best. This is you when you have to focus to do an assignment, to take an exam. This is you focused. Have you noticed, say, you're having music in the background while you're doing homework and you focus? You don't even pay attention to the music anymore because you're focused. That's your conscious mindset. On the other hand, the automatic, like the name implies, is automatic. This is you driving when you're driving for like 30 minutes and you're not paying attention on anything, but you're maybe just paying attention to the music, and you park to your destination and you realize that you were driving for 20 minutes and not once that you paid attention to the road. That's your automatic mindset. In the automatic mindset, we tend to run most often. Most of our day-to-day thoughts are coming from the automatic mindset because it's just easier. So, in the automatic mindset, we are not mentally at our sharpest, we're mentally vulnerable. By saying vulnerability is because we're vulnerable to fall for mental mistakes. Those are called cognitive fallacies, and one of the most common cognitive fallacies is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias means that when your mind has an idea, you tend to only look for information that validates that idea, and you disregard any other information. For example, if I believe that a girl likes me, I'm going to misinterpret anything that girl does as a sign to validate my belief that she likes me. So if one day I see her and she smiles at me, I'm going to be like, she likes me. If she's leaving and she waves bye to me, I'm going to think in my mind she likes me. In reality, maybe she smiles to everyone and she says goodbye to everyone. But if I have already the mindset that she likes me, I'm going to only look for information that makes me believe that I am the one that is right. And this is giving me proof of that. That tends to be very common. Very common. It's a normal mental mistake that everybody can make. But I want to bring it up because it's especially common when it comes to sexual orientation. For people that come from a traditional home that have negative perceptions or negative connotations, negative thoughts about people of a different sexual orientation, it's common that their negative perceptions are validated by confirmation bias. Because if I hold a negative attitude towards someone of a different sexual orientation and I think all homosexual people are mentally sick and they have to go to a psychiatrist because it's obvious that they're mentally sick. If I have this idea in my mind, I might come across 100 people that have no issues whatsoever in their mind. But as soon as I hear or find one that has to go to counseling, I'm going to be like, I told you, this is my proof. That one person validating your assumption for you is stronger than 100 people showing otherwise. Sad, but true. That's how your mind tends to make those mental mistakes. Tends to be very common within sexual orientation. For example, why would somebody believe that the percentages in the population of homosexuality are so high? Perhaps because you're only perceiving people that are of a different sexual orientation, and in your mind you're exaggerating the number. That's confirmation bias. On a topic that is more in a matter of discussion lately, it's about whether homosexual parents should have the possibility to raise children, have children and raise children. In a confirmation bias mindset, you may only, by intuition, think, no, you're going to confuse them. A family is supposed to be one mom and one dad, but if you have two moms or two dads, you're going to confuse them. That may be the intuition. Within confirmation bias, it's very easy to find the case of one person that perhaps grew confused, and that would be the sign to validate your belief and say, I told you. Look, this kid is confused. All kids are like this. A sample size of one cannot really generalize to the whole population. We all have to be aware of this potential mistake that we can make. If you really want to know what's behind, say, a kid being raised by two dads or two moms, you really got to go into people that conduct research on this. This is a topic that has been explored in the field since the 80s, so it's not a new topic. Consistently, research validates the hypothesis that kids raised in a home with two parents that are males or two parents that are females are no different than kids that are raised with heterosexual parents. In some of those studies, kids raised by homosexual parents and kids raised by heterosexual parents are given a set of psychological tests. Not even the best tests can differentiate among those two. If you say, by my intuition, they're going to grow confused. Alright, that may be your intuition, that may be your idea. Is that the reality? No. If you really want to know more about this, you got to conduct your research. You got to really explore this topic further. For anyone that is taking my class, I will post a link that takes you to Cornell University and the review of all the studies that have been done up to this point about kids being raised by heterosexual parents and homosexual parents. The reality is that the field cannot find a difference among those two. The field of psychology does not connect sexual orientation of the same kind as a mental illness. If you like people of your same sex, you're not sick. You're not mentally deficient. You have a different sexual orientation. So what? This is a matter of respect. This is a matter of, civil rights. Overall, if I grew up in an environment that gave me a lot of information for how am I supposed to act as a male, who am I supposed to like as a male, and I never had any questions on either one of those, I would consider myself privileged. Who would it be? Why would I have the right, or who would I be to say that someone that has a different identity or someone that has a different orientation is wrong because they're questioning something that I never questioned on me? The best way to break those negative connotations and that prejudice is through education. And with that, we'll conclude this lesson. Thank you guys. Hold on.